That's your boy Eddie Minnis on the box there, the radio. That's Rogan Smith requests. Shotgun wedding. If you're old enough to marry she. Is that how it goes? If you're old enough to
do this to Minnelli.
To do this to Minnelli, you're old enough to marry she. Yeah. Okay.
Don't try to.
Yeah. Don't try to
I
run.
love that song.
That's a classic. Another Bahamian classic. Let me see that thing there. Ken Williams. Huh?
We need to incorporate more Bahamian music and really promote it. Having a greater appreciation.
Yeah.
Some good music.
Yeah. Usual. Well, I saw a race on the weekend. What was that about?
That's Bahamas Half.
Okay. All right. I didn't know it happened until I was in the middle. No, I wasn't. I was doing some stuff. Yeah.
What do you mean?
I was on the road and then.
You got caught up in it. That's what you mean.
Oh.
Like they had the road split in half.
Yeah.
Where was I coming from? I was coming from somewhere out west. I was out west. Yeah. Out west. And then, because it wasn't really. I didn't hear a lot about it, and so kind of ran into it. Otherwise, you stay off the streets. But so how was your weekend, Rogan Smith? Today's Monday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm exhausted.
All day, yeah.
Are you exhausted, Rogan Smith?
Very.
Yeah.
Because I worked this week. When I say I worked, I did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like I'm getting more and more exhausted.
Are you rested at all?
I feel like
Are you resting? I should say. Because if not, then that's why you're exhausted.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting rest.
How many hours do you sleep?
Or what is the quality of your sleep?
That's a good question.
Well, like for instance, on the weekend, actually this weekend was unusually up and down. Like I usually spend the weekends just more or less horizontal. But this weekend I had to do a lot of meetings and things, so it was unusual. I don't know. I went to bed, I guess, midnight. Is that unacceptable?
I mean, with the time you wake up,
I got around 7.
You probably
7 hours of sleep.
See, yeah, the amount of time to me, if you're not getting quality, if that's not 7 quality.
I was deep.
Oh, you sure? Yeah, you know, yeah. I don't have good deep sleeps.
Yeah. I dream a lot.
Well, that's good. That means you're in what is that, REM?
I don't know if it's good.
What?
My dreams aren't. They're challenging dreams.
Well,
There's
I think
a lot of action going on.
I think dreaming is fine. It's just what you're dreaming. That's your subconscious. I think your subconscious is kind of, I don't know what's going on there.
I just dream about some, now that I think about it, I can't remember them. I'd like to maybe just start writing them down.
Write them down, yeah.
But it's just some, situations,
Yeah.
And they just seem so real, man. I think they're just.
I've had some dreams like that, too. Like some real off-the-wall, crazy.
Are you a big dreamer, Rogan Smith?
Mm-hmm. And I write them down when I'm done. Like when I wake up.
So you wake up?
When I wake up, I immediately, I keep a pen and paper by my bed, a notepad, and so I write down all the stuff.
Oh, tell us one of your dreams.
My dream's so crazy and off the wall.
Our subconscious is a serious thing,
Yeah.
Do they seem very real when you're dreaming? I mean, these are life, day, what do you call it, day-to-day type situations. Like you're in I'm not dreaming by falling off a cliff or anything like that.
Oh, I dream about all that stuff. But I'm always aware that I'm
when you
dreaming.
Wake up, right?
Say again?
You were relieved when you wake up, oh my gosh.
But I'm always aware that I'm dreaming.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not.
I'm always when.
What is that, lucid dream?
I'm deep in sleep, but I know.
Yeah.
That, for example, if I see dead people and people who passed away in my family or friends and stuff, and they're calling me, baby, but you're dead. I'm very aware of things and.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
aware.
a healthy mind.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
A healthy
I
mind.
feel like whatever the situation I'm in,
Yeah.
and it could be like a work scenario or whatever, that is just very real. And then, like you say, when I wake up,
she's like, my gosh. Ooh.
Okay. Shake that off.
And it's almost like you get a do-over when you wake up.
I almost feel like I don't even know if I want to go back to sleep because I don't want that to continue. Do you get continued?
No.
Does it continue?
I was just going to ask that.
Or recurring.
I don't do that.
No, not y'all.
That's on a different level.
The next day or a couple of days later, the dream will pick right back up.
What?
A couple of days later?
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask you a
Rogan is
question?
a special
Can I ask
person,
you
you
a
know.
question? Do you mind if we send you somewhere to be evaluated and checked?
I almost
I
responded
believe
in a
it.
very Bahamian way.
Yeah, you might.
Yeah.
No problem. It's
Oh,
all right. My
that's-
mom's deceased. Yeah, you should probably, get some experimentation or
I
something.
don't need
like
that because ain't nothing wrong with me. What are I doing that for?
She
For
wake
your
up
benefit?
Like 3 or 4 days later, continue.
Yeah. I want to go back to sleep. The dream picks up.
All right, so what's in the news today? Oh, go ahead, Rogan Smith.
I wasn't going to say
Okay.
anything.
Your boy, I didn't see it, but of course he dominates the news. But the Democrats are now up to like 37 seats. They won 7 governorships, all this stuff. And your boy Trump was on an interview last night with the boy Wallace from Fox News, and he says they had a great victory. I mean, how do you? I mean, what is he? He said things like he went back to that with the Whitaker guy. He never knew about anything he said. Just like Joe this morning listed about 10 things that are just completely delusional. What are we going to do as a world? I mean, we just move on from him and let him do his thing?
I think you just stop paying attention to it because, I mean, what is your paying attention to it going to do?
It's other than stress me out.
Everybody who's always listing all these things that he does, it makes, I mean, like, what is it going to change?
You're right. So what we got to do is just hold on. Just try to ignore him until the next chapter. And that is January. See what the Democrats do and see what happens. That's the next chapter.
He's delusional, and that's a continuation of that. So.
Speaking of which, my wife was watching a program on TV called Dynasty on Netflix.
Yeah, the series.
The old Dynasty?
Or it's the new.
It's a reboot.
Yeah, new.
Oh.
What a bunch of crap that is!
It's over the top.
Oh God!
I watched the first couple of episodes. It's almost like that. It's too over the board
First of all,
for
the brothers
me.
read so 24 hours a day. Okay.
It's too over the top.
I mean, they're always dressed up.
And always drama. Always. Well, that was Dynasty,
you
right?
You ever saw that, Ken? Ken, you got to check at least one or 2 episodes of that, man. just for you to see, because for a while you get drawn in, and then you're like, what the hell is going on here, man?
I got to get out.
So why do they, I mean, this is kind of like the soap opera on steroids, right?
Yeah.
Why? What is the benefit of those things? I mean, what is...
I don't know.
I mean, what's the benefit of what's the benefit of like men and not just men? There are people who love sports, and I'd be like, okay, you're sitting here watching somebody else play a game. What's the benefit of that? But people,
it takes you away
it
from
just
your
takes you away.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's an escape.
And I mean, see, it'll suck you in so deep, you forget your own drama.
Like, what the hell?
Be like,
these people these are family members now. First of all, they all live in the same house. That's a problem, right?
Dynasty.
Okay.
On the Ponderosa.
Listen,
like Dallas.
when you get 40-something and married, you got to move out, man. Okay? I know you got a big house and everything, but you can't. This is with the drama. This is why you have the drama. It's too close, man. Get out. Okay? You got the son. He's getting married to his gay lover. The daughter, she married to some guy because she, having relations with the chauffeur.
Mommy and daddy over here.
Mommy and daddy. No, check this out now. The mother and the second wife, the father and the second wife. The father, the father, he leave in the will the house to the first wife, and they just.
I think he secretly likes
then
it.
Then they try to poison each other.
Somebody who ain't interested, he knows the plot
No,
line.
I have to know because I just keep on questioning what's going on here.
Don't lie, you watch all the seasons, eh?
No, this is the first time I watched it.
Oh, okay, because I think it's only like 1 or 2.
And then finally I said, you know what? That's it. We have to move on.
Thursday on Monday, he'll be right here talking about Dynasty again.
No. I said, look here, man. Sauce. You know what sauce is on the TV because it was Netflix.
Yeah, sauce.
That's like
you say
input?
sauce. Like
I thought it was sauce.
No, source.
Yeah.
Source. Yeah, source. Input.
Source.
Like input. Let's move on to a whole other medium.
She was watching that. What'd you do? You change it?
No, but when it got to the end, I said, okay. I got it. Okay?
You secretly enjoy
That's
it.
like mindless TV, man.
Whew, but and everyone's showing the breasts. Straight through.
I thought you'd enjoy that.
Breakfast,
what do you mean? Just
for breakfast? They got on the robe and the thing. And you pop it out all the time.
It's it's nudity.
I mean nudity, but
it's not nude.
The
yes, I get you.
Cleavage and all
of
that.
course, it's this is how I sit around eating breakfast.
Right?
Just to talk to you, just having a chat with you. I'm in a Chanel whatever.
I would love like a soap opera that is so real and show like when people come through the door and they take off the bra and everything just hanging low.
Yeah, sure, like with no makeup.
Swing low.
These people,
chariot.
The makeup. The two women threw themselves in the pool and no makeup even run.
Oh no, because we got waterproof.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what kind of proof
what kind of reality show or what kind of series you think we would have down here?
Oh, but it's highly rated.
Hey?
It's highly rated?
96% like this TV show.
Yeah, of the people who watch it.
7.3 out of 10.
7.3
yeah, that's 10.
That's the IMDb score.
Because the people who watch it, that's their thing. You know, but they need to let me and Ken score that.
Oh, okay.
You're getting ready to go watch that, eh?
Oh my God, they have a lot of people who are big on soap operas. Grant Show and Nicolette Sheridan.
Oh, you remember? She was from Knots Landing.
Oh Lord, see.
Nicolette Sheridan.
Yeah,
that was Paige.
Oh, look at you.
What? Who used to like Greg Sumner?
Look cute.
What?
I'm so proud of you.
Well, that was my old last name, so I knew that.
Not a lot of people would know that. There you
my
go.
maiden name, yeah.
I feel like I'm in one of those dreams and I have to wake up to make sure I'm not in real life. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. You're on the air now, right? Okay. Can we, okay. We need like a defibrillator, man. But you know, I'm gonna get off of them because that's unreal. That's unreal stuff. So you see this thing on the thing about the police officer slapping.
Thing on the thing about the
thing?
Newspaper, the thing, the story in the newspaper. Let's do the thing, the promotions. Roman meal bread.
Oh, I don't have it up yet.
Oh, you don't have it up yet?
Mm-mm.
No, but you're fooling with that doggone dynasty.
First of all, I have one phone in the front of me.
Uh-huh.
So, you know.
Do you have our live phone?
I do.
Okay, and remember, folks, it's 815-8208 if you have something you want to talk to us about. Our guest this afternoon is going to be Gowan Bowe, who is the president of BICA, the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants. So we're going to deal with that. And we're going to talk about some business license issues and some issues, you know, the accountants damn have.
All right, so let's go with the sponsors.
Yeah, sponsors. Roman meal bread.
Sunshine Insurance, 2 locations to serve you. Shirley Street and Carmichael Road behind the Walk-Up Wendy's. Sunshine Insurance, local knowledge, global reach.
And, of course, we have Arwac Homes for your own home.
John Bull Business Center.
Wendy's.
Bristol Wines and Spirits.
Coca-Cola.
KFC.
Superwash.
Burger King.
Subway.
Heineken.
Bristol Wines and
I already called that.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I called it twice. Okay. I miss it. IMB, Insurance Management. No one does it better. Yes.
There you go.
No one does it better. Can't forget them. That's my people.
And Kelly's. May your home be filled with all of the colors of the season. The Kelly's House and Home Holiday Fix-Up sale is on until December 24th. So you and your family can save 25% off on paint and 20% off on paint supplies, except on net items. Want to try something different for your next holiday? Catch the Holiday Fix-Up sale.
Okay.
You're in the right place if you're looking for color inspiration.
And of course, Alive, and we got to say, thank you to Alive for giving us a phone so we can get some WhatsApp messages. Our number is 815-8208. And go with Alive because, hey, believe in best.
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Once it's in there, it's in there.
I'm
proud
of you.
Yeah.
It wasn't in there for the past 3 shows.
I wasn't making an effort.
You should make it.
I made an effort. Okay. So, and again, Gowan Bowe is going to be our guest. I don't know if he can hear us, but hi, Gowan. And we're here with Candy.
Hey.
What's going on? Are those like riding pants or something like that?
Riding because of the khaki?
They just look kind of like, sturdy.
Oh, like the material?
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah. But they, they're not skinny at the bottom. Yeah. They're very comfortable. Thank you for noticing.
So what's going on? What's happening in the world of candy?
Before I touch on the topic, right?
Before you touch on it.
I want to talk about Parkin, man.
Sucrose?
Listen, you have to be on a different
But you see, I say nothing.
You gotta have a certain level of inconsideration. Like, I mean, you have people who, when they pull into the parking spot, that's just how they park. They could park at a diagonal.
My mother does that.
Oh,
that is so annoying to me.
God. And they take up like 2 spots.
People used to burst tires when you did that, right?
Why do we do that? No, well, not we. Why do people like that do that?
Every time I pull into a parking spot, the first thing I think about is, A, am I blocking anyone? B, is this a correct parking, angle and location? Am I
within the lines? Am I too close to a car so that, you consider it? Be considerate.
They have like one
exactly.
Where is this?
Right here.
So I had to maneuver around.
But that's not.
And I did it slowly, so I drive around them, like around.
But that's so funny. That wasn't even the reason why I brought that up. This was like earlier.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, literally, this car took up 2 spaces, and then they get out of the car and think nothing of it.
What's your problem? Your car should have been a half a space. So your car a half a space car. Okay.
I mean, my Lord.
Compact. Some spaces have compact and electric. That one is for half a car.
Anyway, whenever I see parking like that, whoever is driving that car, I've already judged you as a very inconsiderate person. I've already judged you as an inconsiderate person, and there's nothing you can do after that to change my mind.
Can't even Ed always come with it. I already judged you. I know you say you would burst the tire.
No, I've already judged you.
That's more effective.
And you are inconsiderate.
There are people out there.
Not at all.
They live in their best life.
There are people out there, including myself, who are. See, it's like, we go to the litter thing, right? I tell you that when you throw garbage out of your car, I want you to know that I think of you as an indecent animal. Not just a regular animal.
See,
you're a decent guy.
I ain't going that far with the animal.
I'm into the Trump world on this one.
I ain't calling no human being no animal.
Because that's what no, you don't have to. That is what, when you go drive around and you see like a garbage can on the ground that a dog threw over. Dog is an animal. You just did the same thing that they did.
I just think
so let me rephrase it then.
Socialized.
You acted like an animal then. Is that better than being an animal? You acted like?
I think it's poorly socialized.
Okay, poorly. You go to poorly socialized. Go to one of them and say, you know what? I think you're poorly socialized.
No. You go up to one of them and talk with you're an indecent animal and see how that works out. Poorly socialized. That's very offensive.
And you know what's good? And we're saying one of them. I like that, Rogan Smith. Thank you.
That's okay. You go up to one of them. Yes, because we're referring to people who are poorly socialized.
Okay. Well, I'm going to now
say. So I am going to say them.
I'm going to now say, sir, Rogan Smith. I can tell you her phone number and everything. She says that you're poorly socialized.
And I can say Edward Fields said you're an indecent animal. Well, see which one of those sounds. Which one of those sounds worse.
But the reason you say it is because let me tell you why you say it. When someone is doing that, you want them to be cognizant of what people think of them.
No. That is not the way to get people to change behavior, my dear. Well, that is going to make people very offended, and you don't. Let me tell you something.
Yeah, you don't want to put people on the defensive.
That's not going to make them say, "Oh, wow, I made a mistake." That's going to make them want to attack you.
Why are you being like that, Shaggy? I don't want to do it. Okay, you're doing it to me, man. Okay?
It's true.
Yeah, listen, I'm sorry. Yes, I tell you what. Let me tell you what is on the defense.
Nobody.
When I drive,
a disintegrator gun for you.
What'd she say? I don't even know what she's saying.
He said, I stay right there because you're going to get the disintegrator gun from me.
Yeah, you're gone. You're already gone. But the reality is, these folks, okay, if I were a cop, they could get defensive. I dragging their hip off. Let them defense on that.
No, and even then, I think you got to be careful.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't physically drag them.
Yeah,
because that'd be like in the paper.
All I said is you refer to a human being as an animal. That's a different kettle of fish.
Well, listen, what the old people used to say, and I don't know. I'm just saying it. I was hoping you could come up with something. Okay, I didn't know what they say, but
old people say
the old people
treat people as you expect to be treated.
Right,
that's what they'd say.
Right. And
I don't expect to be caught
like an animal.
No, they didn't say that.
Oh yeah, they say all kind of the old people. They did not know PC.
They will say, you gotta have brought up C or something like that.
The old people were not PC.
Okay.
You know that, and I know that. You from Andros. I know your mother called you some bad names.
No, but
And your Grammy. You have a Grammy?
Both my grandparents have passed away, and they weren't.
Were they alive when you were alive?
Yes.
Okay. You ever get a cut skin?
Yes.
Okay, with a switch?
But I had to pick.
Excuse me.
But I had to pick.
So, excuse me. I think I'd rather someone call me an animal than the switch.
No,
okay,
I don't
it's over they hold it in. You know, and you try to move it. Okay?
You ever get beaten before?
You hurt
Not
from
like that.
physical and verbal.
My mother was not a beater. My mother was a launcher, a thrower of things.
Throw a shoe or a rock.
Tray,
whatever she could put her hands on.
Yeah, and so you just, you know.
What's up with that? Because your mommy was small, right?
Small, so she knows, like the one time I held her and I said, Mommy, what's happening? But my mother also had the Olympian capacity to run, pull off her shoe, and throw it in one motion. Okay? All right? She running, because we running, right? And she had the ability, and she had the ability to pull that shoe off and throw that in one go.
I really think they went to school for that.
You ever seen that? You've seen that action, right? You never had things thrown at you?
I got slapped before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why you have puffy cheeks?
Well, I would think I have one puffy cheek.
Right.
She didn't back on. She didn't go pop up.
It was only one slap.
It was like one slap.
Okay. Anyway, so what's going on?
You see how far we could go in talking about a pocket?
No, that's good.
Pocket?
But you know why? Tell you why? These things in a poorly socialized environment annoy those of us who may be considered more socialized. It's a very annoying thing because you would not do that. I said to someone the other day, you talk about do unto others, right? Why do you then say, you know what, I'm going to park in this spot the right way? Because, not because you want to, you would love to be able to just pull up, but because you're being considerate of others.
Yeah.
And that's what annoys you because they could give a damn.
And then I have OCD too, so I can't do that.
OCD, though.
I can't, but I can't park like that. That would drive me nuts.
Yeah. So you're not considerate then, you're just...
Yes, I am considerate.
Nuts.
I am.
Okay.
No. In addition to that, I could not do it.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't inconsiderate and I had OCD.
Days, by the way, I want to talk about OCD. We're going to bring some people on because that has ranges. I have a little of it.
Yeah.
But it has
it's a wide range
of. You can get to dysfunctional.
What's your OCD?
Well, I like things neat. I like things being neat, but I'm not dysfunctional neat. Like some people they line
and that's
it up.
one aspect
I
of it.
line stuff up.
Yeah.
But that's
counting steps, things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on with people with that.
Me
so
too.
we'll bring someone on and we'll talk about it. What do you have? What's your thing today?
Okay.
So what do you have? You brought a burger into the studio. We got to go to news and then we can come back with candy.
Yeah, okay.
What do you
have?
have?
Our guest is Gowan Bo. We'll do a couple minutes with candy and then we got Gowan Bo coming on.
I still love that song. What is that, Gino D? Man,
Gino D.
I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Gino D.
You got that little Michael Jackson element up in there.
Really?
Yeah. Baby, junglers.
Okay.
Yeah, man, that's Michael Jackson.
I have to listen to that.
It ain't Michael singing it.
I know, but I mean, I gotta listen to that
y'all
again.
Ain't
then.
Got you ain't got no musicians air, but y'all ain't got no air.
No, we don't.
Y'all ain't got no air for music.
Two, but not that.
Y'all ain't got no air for music. Y'all don't know nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe I just didn't listen to it that closely.
That's correct. Y'all ain't. We're animals.
Oopsie. So yeah.
Your words.
So I wanted to actually talk about a conflict resolution etiquette.
We need that in here.
No, let me tell you why. All right, CRE, right. CRE.
What you shaking your head and rolling your eyes for? One of these days you can do that, your head can flop out on the ground. I'm not picking it up.
Your obituary will just have a bunch of acronyms in it.
One of these days
I'm going to write it.
Your head is going to be on the ground, your eyes over there, and I'm not picking it up.
Yeah, you can pick it up.
No, okay. So and this isn't like physical conflict or whatever. But if you have like Rogan, say if you had an issue with, I don't know, somebody close to you, or a edge, your partner, or friend, or something like that, right? And you raised a concern of something that they may have said or did to you, right? And you hear them out, and you listen to them. Now, is that a time where you can also raise some concerns of things that they've done, or is that just solely that is all for them. And then whenever you need to voice your concern, that's a whole different day and time.
I know what you want me to say, but I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to say
no, it's not what I want you to say.
That is my time. That is my time to bring up whatever's wrong. I'm going to listen to what you've said.
Right.
But I'm also, it depends on what, if it's totally unrelated, then I'm not going to bring up something that's unrelated.
Right.
But if you're telling me about coming home late, and you come home late, I'm bringing it up because it makes sense.
I was just going to say, so now if it's something that this person also does as well, would you then use that opportunity to say, okay, well, hold on, you checking me, let me check you?
I'm going to hear them out, and then I'm going to do that.
DFWT.
DF.
What I almost thought it was.
WT.
Look here.
Duff.
Well, give me that too. Don't fool with that. Okay?
No, this is etiquette. You gotta people. I think people need to know how to do this.
I find that when someone is upset enough or perturbed enough to bring their thing up, because people don't just bring up things unless you're lunatics. When people bring up things that they've pondered as a slight to them, that is not the time to be coming with the counter. With the counter slight. No, I'm just saying it's not. It's not. I'm disagreeing.
Even if the counter is, hey, you getting upset that I've done it, but you do it to me.
No, I'm not saying I don't do that.
You do that to me.
No, but you do that to me as well. Everyone does it. I'm just telling you.
Oh, Lord, we need CRE.
Everyone does it. I'm just simply saying it's not wise.
It's not wise to bring.
I'm just saying it's not a wise thing to do. It's not beneficial.
That's human nature, man.
So when should
never?
Never. So now the person has to sit on that just because you brought it up first?
No, it's better just to let things roll down, and then when it happens. See what happens is
he does not follow.
See what happens is when you do it, they never remember that time. You need to wait until they do it, and then highlight it. Because people are I'm just as guilty. People are, when you say things to them that is not happening in the moment, they've never done that.
Right.
It's just the way it is. So, now you got to go recall dates and stuff. It's just wait. It's like, I tell you the thing with the TV, but I can tell you the thing about the TV because I can't say it on it. Yeah. But you just, I'm not saying I live by that advice. I'm just telling you.
So proper etiquette would be, when you are approached with something, you let them voice whatever they have to say, and correct it, rectify it, however you can say sorry and move on, and then that's it.
Yeah. If sorry is warranted.
Because you don't have to apologize for everything.
Yeah. But it's not. It's like I always tell people, even relationships and stuff. You have to really, listen. My job on a daily basis is dealing with conflict. Every single day. There's not a day that doesn't go by when I'm not dealing with conflict, if it's only once or maybe 10 times a day. And it's not easy, man. People aren't they're not receptive. People are not receptive to criticism.
That's everyone.
Everyone. That's what I said. People are not receptive. Even though they have this word about constructive criticism, they must be building a house.
No, man, there is such a thing.
There's a way of delivering it.
And I think you're absolutely right. There's a way of delivering it. But you have people who are incredibly sensitive, and so it does not matter how constructive the criticism is, or you could have super gentle. You could be the sweetest tone, and all they're hearing is, oh, so that's how you feel. You know what I mean? And so what you end up is in a scenario where you say nothing and let them continue on. You just don't have any dealings with them.
I find that's everyone.
Yeah, I can admit
I don't know in the history of my life that I can recall someone graciously taking criticism.
I've taken criticism graciously.
Okay.
I have.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are people who have as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that in general.
To me, if I've heard someone say something enough, if you said something and he said something and Kenneth said something, then there's an acceptance level on my part where I could say, you know what, there's validity to this, and this person's trying to help me out because I've heard it many times. Not everybody is like that. I get it, but
we see ourselves differently from how other people see and view us. So sometimes when you would say something to me, like, in my head, no, that's not who I am or what I am about or what I think or feel. But like you said, if you and you and you are all saying the same thing to me,
I'm the common denominator
then
here.
hold on now. Something, maybe how I view myself with this particular matter is not what I am. Right.
Accept it because the overwhelming evidence is against you. But I don't know if you feel good about it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about accepting it.
Good about
no, exactly. No one feels good about criticism. That's the point. But Candy.
Yes.
Well, you could run this gal.
Hey, no. Yeah, because it's time. It's time. But, conflict resolution etiquette. There's an etiquette.
And by the way, you talk about conflict resolution etiquette.
You can't go down there.
The streets. You're shooting gun and thing.
Well, we're calling them animals.
On conflict.
That was a good end when you call it them animals.
Don't do it to the face. Don't do airways.
That is not good resolution.
No, all right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan, the acceptor of constructive criticism, Smith.
There you go.
You realize, of course, that it's kind of like a behind the what do you call it? Behind the back door, constructive criticism.
Whatever.
Suck it deep.
Yeah.
Suck it again. Anyway, our guest this afternoon is Mr. Gowan. Gowan.
Go on.
No, Gowan is correct. Go on.
Go on.
Gow. Okay, I mean, why? How do people? First of all, it's not a hard name to pronounce.
Right?
It's Gow.
One.
I mean, it's a thing. It's 2 syllables. Okay? What do they call you? Go on?
Yeah, they make it up. I've even been called Gavin before, so I don't know.
Gavin? Yeah, Gavin. I like that better.
That's your new name now on. Gavin.
What's happening, Gavin?
I don't worry about it.
Gavin. And you know what? Listen,
funny
I don't know of any country that brutalizes stuff like that.
Oh, no, yeah, we mess it up. Well, I get the furl.
Yeah, exactly.
And Belu is blue.
But you see, furl, I actually understand as dialect. Okay, it's like, like you can't say your V's or you say your W's or your H's. That's dialect. What I like is how we just take a word, just a regular word, and just completely reconstruct it. Only us do that. Anyway, Gowan Bowe, how you doing?
Not bad.
Okay, you are now the president of the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants, which is very British. It sounds very British. And so I haven't been invited into British in quite a while, have I? But when you go Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants, one must go British. So I'm going to get right to the point. Now, one of the things that has arisen, and I don't know if the general public is aware of this, is this issue with the business license.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're here to help me get away from my prejudices, okay? So one of the issues that is out there is that people who have $10 million or less business turnover, turnover, that's correct phrase,
revenue
right?
Turnover, yep.
Does not have to get audited statements. Now you know what I can say right off the top. Tell me what I can say.
Well, you ask them why they're getting let off. That's the first thing. But secondly, why? No, I can come to the first one. Why anybody having audited statements? Because that's what I would say.
Well, I wasn't going to say that one because and you know what I can say the next one. Let me see if you say the next one. Let me see if you know it.
No, but I heard the same. Be mindful of the company you keep.
Okay.
Right. So when I hang in with you, I always be careful.
Well, Gavin, let me tell you what I would say. Okay. So my first inclination is this. Now, businesses that I think it was below 100,000 didn't have to have audited statements or certified.
Well, there was in the past there was a requirement to have limited assurance performed on your submission into the business license, and if you were under 100,000, then you didn't have to. But actually, people forget that the limit was actually $1 million. Back in 2015.
Okay, so they reduced it over the years.
Yeah, down to one.
So and then I went to 500,000, and now it's back up to 10 million. Essentially, you don't have to have certification or audit it, correct?
Based on what they say right now.
Right. Now, my immediate, response to that is, well, them accountants, them, mad? because all them audits that was happening up to 10 million, that gone. I put it in my
I think you may look at it that way.
You see, so when you're lobbying, because the thing is about groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the NRA, they don't want no real, they don't really want no restriction on the multiple cartridge thing.
I hear you on that one. Yeah.
So how do you now justify to me that is not the issue? Because guess what? All the people who under 10 million, except the people who under 10 million who in PICA, they like that.
Well, actually, no, because, the devil is always in the detail. Because under 10 million, they said you have to submit financial statements. So the first thing is
bank accounts.
No, financial statements.
Okay.
So if you're under 10 million, you have to submit financial statements. So the first or the immediate response from smaller businesses, well, I don't prepare financial statements. Right. And in reality, the tax is being driven off of a revenue number. So why is it that you want to see my balance sheet that shows my assets, my liabilities? Why is it you want to see my statement of income that would show my expenses and my profitability and my cash flows and equity statement? And do you want all the notes, which is unclear? And then the second...
And they could also be, what do you call them, company statements? In other words...
Yeah, management accounts that have been prepared for specific purpose in the ones that are there. The second element was that it said, okay, you had to submit the full year of bank statements. Now, from a business perspective, why is it that the government needs bank statements? And when you start talking about that, the bank statements don't actually tell you revenue and expenses only. A business may be borrowing money. So you'll see an inflow of the borrowed proceeds. You'll see monthly payments in terms of repaying. A business may get capital injections.
So they would then, that would be a point to then ask questions, not to...
well, that's the logical aspect. But, it goes back to first saying, where in the world, and this is not one of those casual statements, where in the world do you actually get into what I'm going to say, the submission of such proprietary details absent any belief that it is either a misrepresentation, fraudulent, or erroneous?
Usually it's after they
you submit and then they come into it. Right. And whilst you jumped on the ones under 10 million, the ones over 10 million, they've increased the level of attestation from what was previously limited assurance, which was a review that said, do you identify anything that indicates an error, to now an audit, which is the highest level of attestation. Right. So not only are the businesses under 10 million concerned over the bank statements, businesses over 10 million are saying, I don't necessarily have an audit, so why are you telling me I have to have an audit just to apply for a business license?
So let me do this so that we can clear the air here. So my first inclination, or my first response or reaction, I should say, was that you were not asking only to get rid of the bank statement requirement, because I agree with that. Yeah. It's, BS. But it seemed like you were saying, well, we need to have audited statements or certification.
No,
so you're not calling for certification under 10 million.
No, what really was, what is the objective of the government? And if the objective of the government is to say, well, we get submissions coming in and we want to have, if you will, a level of satisfaction that someone independently has verified the amounts coming in. They may take the position that everything over $10 million represents close to 80% of the revenues they collect, and that may be fine. But when you look at those under 10 million, and one of the first things the VAT department indicated were they had a number of businesses that miraculously always fell under the threshold until the VAT returns were added up. So it really was, okay, let's have a discussion over what your principal objective is. And if your principal objective was to say, well, we have a certain level of assurance, audit is completely insane, because, as I said, that is reserved for when you actually believe that someone has misrepresented their filing. So when you even go to the IRS, it's a random audit that takes place, but that is to check whether you're cheating. And it's the IRS that comes out.
Audited statements because of IRS, because of income tax and all that kind of stuff.
And they're used to that environment, but they want the full set. But actually, the IRS doesn't even say audited statements. If you get subject to an audit, they themselves come out, and the cost of doing so is actually borne by the IRS. Now, yes, ultimately you're going to pay by your taxes, right?
So again, I want to be clear because let me tell you, Garvin, or whatever your name, when people hear a professional organization, association, lobby for something, there's an immediate distrust. And so we have to then now clear it up so there's no confusion. Because if, for instance, the government is making a mistake about not having accounts under $10 million, turnover under $10 million, not verified, that's not for y'all to lobby for.
No, that is on the government side. That is in reality.
Y'all to say, well, no, you should have certification. Are you all calling for certification, or are you just not commenting on that?
No, we're saying, one, how did you get to what is now the current position? Because all of it.
Okay.
To go from what was limited assurance, where a business really was subject to, I'm going to say light touch, but not in a negative sense, meaning that it was really saying a business had to demonstrate that the numbers they're reporting were reasonable by either, talking about sales figures, giving some supporting information. So it was not what I'm going to say an arduous task. It was one that said you had a limited level. The second side is the government has to decide on the appropriate threshold. Yes, that is indeed the case. If they say 10 million is the one, that's the government side of it. But you can't write rules that actually contradict the professional standards that we have to report to you on. And that's what they've currently done.
So let's close this one up. If I've got, because one of the arguments would be, the reality is that under a certain amount of money or whatever the threshold is, that the certification means nothing anyway. Because
the amount of revenue, the amount of taxes relatively is more.
Anyone could, I sign it, okay? I'm not saying...
No, and that's the one that we know is a part and parcel of where the government has gone to. And so as a profession, what we are saying is don't tar everyone with a broad brush. If you have some who don't perform anything, submit and you find various deficiencies.
That can be a tar if indeed they're just saying that's no longer a requirement. That's what I want to, I'm gonna get this. I got to get this out of you. I don't know why this is sounding like this, but what I'm saying is, if the government says to business, and we're always talking about ease of doing business and all that, that is no longer a requirement. I think it puts the BICA in a kind of precarious situation to be saying, you know what, it should be a requirement.
No, and I don't. If that is what you interpreted from that perspective, that's not what BICA is saying. What we are saying is that if you are going down the line of requiring audits or not audits, if you're requiring the preparation of financial statements, understand where you're moving towards. Now, in the UK, all companies are required to file financial statements, unaudited financial statements. That's not a requirement that has been here. We have the requirement for accounting records. And if you're going to require financial statements, the reality is the BICA profession is going to be engaged in order to assist in that, because the businessman who's running QuickBooks or running the till as his set of accounting records is going to need to be able to put them into a presentation format that is acceptable. And so there is going to be opportunities for the profession, and we don't have to look at it in terms of saying government should legislate an opportunity for us to make revenue. And that's not what's being said. It is more saying.
But just be careful.
There may be some, and I think that would be mischievous in the sense that they're saying, well, yeah, they're trying to protect the profession. The same way you look at a lot of the laws, you say the lawyers make it complicated so that they can go through the court system. Ours is a profession of independence and objectivity. And when we give advice, we have to always remember that is the stakeholders who we're trying to protect. And so if we're looking at a business who is a licensed entity from business license, then we have to ensure the business license department is satisfied. We have to ensure that the citizens who look at the public purse are not being shortchanged. And we don't have a vested interest, if you will, in trying to make it more onerous on businesses.
But I just don't know. It's very altruistic of you. If it is the role, and I won't belabor it, of the organization to say to government, you know what, in terms of really verifying, you're missing the boat. I don't know if that's their role to say.
And I don't think we've done that.
Now, on the issue of things like, well, why you need bank accounts? I could get behind that, because you're saying that's not anywhere on the planet that they require that. And that's just by the way, how are the consultations coming with regard to that?
Well, late, is the first element, but the positive side is you having that. And what they have looked at is really saying, well, what was our objective? Because there is now, if you will, an appreciation to say, well, have we thought this through by the various stakeholders? Biker being one of them, the business community being the other side. And I think we have to be very careful that we don't give an impression that all businesses are criminals and their accountants are complicit in it. Because some of the narrative coming around is that way.
By removing that requirement, stating that if you submit your numbers, we're believing you.
Not if you're saying to me, submit my bank statements, because then as we go through. All right. So when we go and say take out the bank accounts, I'm saying, whilst to a layman it may seem small feat, now I'm saying not only do you have to submit your revenue number, you have to submit your whole financial statements. So aren't you under 10 million? You do your whole financial statements. So you're saying, well, I am sure that I trust the revenue number, so I want to see all your assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And so, the argument just is really not very accurate.
VAT's role in this. I mean, we all now know that VAT runs, and I think you said it, Rupert Roberts has said it, all sorts of people have said it, that VAT runs, the administration of VAT runs fairly smoothly, other than the refund section, and that's just because they broke. Okay, it ain't an administrative glitch, it's a cash flow glitch. So if the VAT thing is fairly, efficient, and in fact, I know a lot of people who've gotten VAT audits. Yeah. Okay. Why, if the VAT number is being reported, which is on your turnover, why do they need anything?
And this is the transition period. So when you speak to the accounting profession, when VAT got put in, the first thing is there are differences under revenue that has to be reported for VAT purposes and business license. So let me give a prime example. In the banking industry that I now participate in, interest income is VAT exempt. Under business license, we pay business license fees on it. In the construction industry, the insurance industry, you have the general contractor, subcontractor. Under VAT, if I'm a general contractor, I charge VAT to my customer on the gross number, and I collect VAT from my subcontractor. So I have a net position upon which I'm paying the VAT, which is my retention.
But that's all in the report.
That's in the report. But on the business license, the Department of Inland Revenue has taken the position that general contractors should be paying on the gross and subcontractors should be paying on their revenue, which is double counting. So there are a number of nuances. I'm not going to say a large number. There are a number of nuances that say VAT and business license don't necessarily correlate one for one. That is only a transition phase, because I agree that ultimately the Department of Inland Revenue should know these differences. So that when we get into that process, we're able to say, okay, you report 100 under business license, you report 80 under VAT, and I understand the differences. The assurance process that the independent accountants were doing as a part of that process was, if you will, providing that assurance to government without having to go through that exercise. And you mentioned the audits coming from the Department of Inland Revenue. Again, when you start looking at, I'm going to say, the more complex areas, this is where the accounting profession still has a great opportunity, because the Department of Inland Revenue can engage them as a third party. Businesses that feel aggrieved can engage them to, say, defend against positions that are taken. So when we look at it, the profession is not looking at how do we create a revenue opportunity. We have to be looking at, there are opportunities already inside of it, but what we need to get to is a position that is understood by all parties, that is practical. And that's really the fundamental exercise. We've been doing this certification, you want to call it. There's no such thing in accounting or auditing by that term. It's either I give you an audit, I give you a review, or I give you an attestation. But that exercise was really done by virtue of saying in the past there wasn't the great insight. As VAT has come around, they have the greater insight. So it was a transition. And if government saw this as a transition, then that is the sensible thing on their side. And like I said, there's just opportunities to do things in a different way. But it is a little bit of what I'm going to say a reactive position taken, is that I believe some of the big boys didn't report correctly, so I'm going to require an audit. The smaller boys are less significant to me, and I'm going to ask for so much information that I will never read in reality, unless I actually pick on a particular company here and there, because am I going through 12 months of bank statements? Am I going through, and do they even understand financial statements?
Let me ask you a question, though. Now that people have to report VAT, I would assume, I could be wrong, well, I probably am wrong, that a large percentage of businesses are on things like QuickBooks.
They've improved their accounting records. Okay, yes, right. They have improved their accounting records.
And so, from an administrative ease on the business side, that's not a big deal to pump out anymore. It's not like you have to go add up the receipts and all that, right?
It's easier. Right. I'm going to say that. Remember how we are as a society. We're a just-in-time society. Yeah. So if you need me to record information relative to my sales and my expenses in order to claim refunds and pay my VAT, I'm going to do that. But am I using QuickBooks or any of the accounting software to prepare full sets of financial statements? And the answer will be a large number of businesses are not. They're pulling certain pieces of information out of it.
I was going to say by them just doing the inputs, though. The information is there for them to be able to produce those reports.
Not to do the accounts 101 lesson here today, but if I say the answer will be yes on cash, because they would be showing the cash in and out. Yes on the expenses being paid out and the revenues being collected, but not necessarily on the assets they have on the books, not necessarily on the liabilities, not necessarily even on the equity in the company in terms of what the shareholders are.
But at the end of the
day, because if it's all in your pocket, some of them are not them.
An auditor is they look to your point, they're only looking at turnover anyway.
Is what the Department of Inland Revenue is looking at. So why even ask? And that's why I said it comes across, as you can see, very absent consultation.
So
because the language didn't even work.
To your concerns.
Yes, there are a number of meetings taking place, and I think what's going to be important is, to me, not allow this to become unwieldy, where we are talking around the issue as opposed to getting to the root. And the root is, most businesses have said they were comfortable. Funny enough, as you spoke, they were comfortable with the quote-unquote certification process, because for businesses that were not large enough that they were going full-fledged into audits, they were happy because it gave a level of assurance to them that, yes, the numbers I've reported, because most business people have, whether it's a temporary accountant, whether it's the niece or nephew putting it in, these are the numbers that are being reported. And ultimately, I want to be comfortable that Department of Inland Revenue is not going to march in 6 months and go through all my books and I have a huge issue and I get fined. So, if you say the level of assurance that was previously involved, most businesses will say, well, we understood that one because it didn't require all this other information you wanted as a substitute for it. And then secondly, all businesses would say, well, if we are doing things by regular submissions, yes, the requirement to have any level of attestation should fall away. And I think it's making sure that we balance the two sides.
Let me ask you another question. So you're in this field that has decided to alienate us by calling debits credits and credits debits. They do that, right, Rogan?
Yes,
I don't understand it, but they do, and I don't even want to understand it. The rest of the world is going on, a debit is subtraction. Okay? A credit is a plus.
But they somehow, You're thinking about a bank.
See, and then they can get into about a bank. Okay, I think about my money. I think about no bank.
Okay.
Well, then, yeah. And you think about something, and they know a debit is a, but it's a deliberate thing to keep us out. Now, the thing is, you got to have your protection, right? Okay, just confuse the suckers, man. So anyway, and we'll have to go to. It's so confusing. We have to go to school to understand it.
Just the basics.
Okay, all right. Now. One of the things we were extremely, because we were not a tax, quote unquote, a tax environment, i.e. we paid after sales tax, right? Yeah. Or duties, hidden taxes. We have obviously had a real degree of immaturity in terms of things like reporting, etc. Mm-hmm. First of all, first question is, have you seen an increase in the maturity of this market? We're going to take a break of this market with regard to how they keep financials, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be right back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have the most esteemed Mr. Gowan Bowe, the protector of all accountants. Gowan, the question we asked before we gone off the air is, as a result of the introduction of VAT, in previous, incarnations, the Bahamas and Bahamians really wasn't into to me, we don't even have tax.
Yeah, as far as
they
thought.
Okay, and keeping receipt. Why are we keeping receipt? We don't need no receipt. Okay.
You're in trouble with your wife.
What's that? Exactly. All right. So now, we have this regime that requires reporting and keeping records. Have you seen then, has this been beneficial to business in terms of their record keeping and financial accounting?
The answer is absolutely. And it is still a progression. But what you are finding, businesses, because they have to report, are now looking for systems and processes to do so to make it more efficient.
Right.
Even the plumber is saying that, if I have a nephew that can set up QuickBooks, when I write my manual invoices, he's keeping a log and a record of those, putting them in. And as I said, they're using it for the fit for purpose. They're using it for the information they need out of it. Right. But what definitely is coming to light is persons are now saying, well, I didn't even realize profitability or lack thereof, because I wasn't keeping a very good record, and as long as there was cash in the pocket, I felt I was doing pretty good. But then I wondered why sometimes I ain't got enough. And it was because sales doesn't mean cash, because I may do it on credit, and sales doesn't mean profit, because if my expenses are close to my sales, then in reality, if I take out the sale proceeds, not the net proceeds, I could have been getting myself into problems. And so I think what you're finding is certainly from the smallest business to the largest, they are paying more attention to it. Now, I think there's a fair statement to say the financial statements themselves have become more complex. So as you get a larger business, yes, there are so many standards that come into it, and most business owners saying, all I want to know is, I have any money?
Yeah.
And how much money I got? Yeah. And so when we talk about fair value, which is not realized, so yes, my building is worth $10 million, but I can't rent it for anything, right? That sometimes has a little bit of a confusion, but persons are becoming better at using financial information to make decisions, and that is certainly a maturity in our society.
We're just taking cash out to say everyday buy limes or something, and not recording it correctly because it's only $5 or $10.
Exactly, and that adds up, and then you get caught off guard. And a lot of businesses that have failed because they were actually running at a deficit and didn't even realize it, because they saw cash on the day, but didn't realize they had bills accumulating, whether it be electricity, whether it be the rent that was coming due, whether it be the payroll, and then when the till was low relative to the expenses they had to pay, then they get into failure.
Now, one of the other things that I think is critical to a developing tax environment, right? And remember, folks, 815-8208 if you have any questions.
Sending voice notes, which I don't want to. I can't. They need to send a text, please.
Yeah. Is the following, and they're doing that because they want to be safe and drive. So if you need to call, just pull over the side if you're doing it.
I do understand.
Is this? There are nuances that I think we did it with the KYC.
Yep.
And this is a classic example, too. We just throw everything into the bucket. But nothing works that way. There are always exceptions that are genuine. So, for instance, property owners associations. Well, property owners associations are only vertical neighborhoods, right? So if I have 10 people on my road, none of us are VAT registered as a home. Okay. Yeah. So now, why then would a condominium complex that essentially is just connected units, paying, landscapers, etc. Why would they need to be VAT registrants?
Yeah.
And by the way, they're nonprofits.
And, just to needle you now, you must be an accountant because now you're lobbying for something that is key to you. I know, and that's key to you.
But I've admit it. I admit
it. In this particular scenario, there are so many of those cases that we have raised with government, but not from a position of saying, well, let's become combative. That in reality, we can sit down with a very methodical analysis and show you that in that particular scenario, the fact is I have expenses, let's say, totaling $100,000. I go out to my tenants and I say it's $100,000.
Split it by 10.
But theoretically, I could say, well, you pay Johnny, I'll pay Peter, you pay Paul. Right. And if we want to really get, nonsensical, we can avoid this because the actual expenses are really only shared costs that we've decided for administration purposes to put centrally.
It's $100,000 divided by 10 units, 10,000
each of you pay the ones there. And so that's one of them. We have, like I said, the general contractor, the subcontractor issues. We have the insurance and the sub-agent issues. And this is one where saying, and I was listening to the conversation earlier about the conflict resolution and constructive criticism. But this is one where I'm saying, forget constructive. If you are in a position of what I'm going to say fiduciary responsibility, which the tax authorities are, because they're managing our purse, you have an obligation to consult those that have the best available knowledge and experience. And you also have an obligation to ensure that your system is designed to accommodate not only the payers, but the recipients of it, so that you are not running into a system that becomes so complicated that on a rules base, people find ways to avoid the rules. And when you do that, you're actually counterproductive in your exercise.
You know what I'm finding? I'm finding, and I don't know if it's deliberate. I don't think it's deliberate. That just like human beings, people take defensive positions. So once they either decided that we need this revenue or that we're right, that no matter how much rationale you put to them, how much example you show around the world, that this, I mean, there are a couple places that have repealed issues on property, on things like you talk. Is the only way to do it. There's only one way, but it's an acceptable way. But it has to be done. Is to go through the courts. Yeah. You have to literally in these type of regimes and say, you know what, you can't lobby for 20 years or 10 years on this. So you know what, let's go to court. And by the way, they even some regimes I remember saying that's what you may require. You require to do that.
And it's set up in our system. But what I would also say on that one is, who benefits when you go to court? And then let's break it down to dollars and cents, right? And really, it's only the actual attorneys, and that's not taking revenue away from them. I'm saying that oftentimes the very subject that is being litigated is not the beneficiary of the outcome. And so if that's the case, we waste money by going through it if we said, there are accounting rules.
And there are precedents.
And there are other environments on which we operate. And if we do something based on copying and pasting from another jurisdiction and we find that it does not fit for our circumstance, that we're mature enough to say it isn't even taking on criticism. Mature enough to say, you know what? We made an attempt. There is a need to amend it. And there is no embarrassment in it. And you know what? The hell with the political games, because everything I do is going to be a political football. So when I go into it, I can walk out of it being comfortable in saying that my citizens will see that I've made a mature decision and made it more appropriate.
When you threaten judicial, if they know that they were wrong in the first place, they back off.
But then that's wrong as well because they may have been right.
Yeah, well, exactly. You got a question?
Well, this texter said, they agree with you, Ed, and they have our VAT filings, as you said, which supports gross turnover. So why do they need the bank statements? And is the government setting itself up to begin corporate taxation?
I think that there's this conspiracy theory, and in reality, the bank statements don't move you to corporate taxation. The financial statements does give the impression that they want to be more knowledgeable about the overall workings of the businesses, meaning that they want to know the size. So how large is the business? How much are the expenses? What is the profitability? And I think if at the end of the day that is their rationale, then if they be upfront with it, persons would still say, well, government has the ability to tax and they have the ability to change the tax system. Do I want them making a change based on a lack of information or based on information? And even if it is a matter of submitting really on a no-names basis by saying that you get unique identifiers with the top businesses submitting certain core details that allow them to understand the size of the market, then fine. But in reality, VAT has opened the eyes to the government, whether we like it or not, on the true size of, I'm going to say, commercial activity taking place in the country. Because whether it be exempt, zero rated, or with a VAT rate, they have the information now to understand what is transacting between persons in the community. And so from that perspective, it goes back to saying, do they have the necessary expertise on staff to analyze this and actually come up with new solutions? And that is not a criticism to the persons that are there. That is saying that this is not what you've done. So if you are needing to engage persons with that level of experience and expertise, even if on a short-term contractual basis, there is no shame in that game. Absolutely. It is saying that I'm going to use the best people to actually get the best answer that I need to get to. And, it is amazing to me, Ed. I know you are, the character that, that's why I say the company you keep, that will needle to say, let's start a debate so we open the conversation. Yeah. And to me, I think that everyone except the policymakers have moved to that. And that's not saying that you don't have staunch, tribalistic mindsets that still persist. But the younger generation and the vast majority are saying, why isn't it we can't sit down and have the sensible conversation and change when we believe that we should change?
But one of the things that I think exists in this, doesn't exist in this country, Colin, and this is no offense to your organization, is I don't think we have a culture of advocacy. So what I mean by that is we have a culture of reactionacy, if there's such a word. Okay, I'm making that up, of course, right? But we don't have a culture of forward-thinking advocacy. Mm-hmm. So what happens generally is this. Something affects a particular company, okay? That company calls up a minister or a government official or whatever, and it fights the battle on that thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether successfully or not. Mm-hmm. But they haven't solved the problem. No. They've only solved that item.
Yeah, the band-aid on a cancer.
All right? Yeah. As opposed to, again, I can name you a million things that... I can't name you a million things, I'm sorry. I can name you several things that I know exists in, for instance, the KYC issue, the VAT issue, that the advocates, whether they be the financial services industry, whether they be the legal industry, they're not scouring the legislation on a yearly basis and saying, you know what, this circumstance has changed, this doesn't apply, we need to present this scenario. Yeah. They don't do that.
Yeah. And I wholeheartedly agree with you to a certain extent. Some of it is what I'm going to say is fear of retribution, because you find that if you are too vocal, then you get a target on your back. And so everyone is saying, as long as I'm not in a particular organization, right? So I don't draw the ire to a particular organization, you find more willingness to speak out. But I find that in reality, some persons may consider me overly vocal, but it is a nationalistic view that I have, that to me, I want to see the Bahamas better. And so whilst there are those that are critical of commentary that I may give, to me, it is the best of my sort of training and expertise. So to your point, when you say we don't have the advocacy, I would say to you is that some of it takes place, but I agree with you that we don't, when we look at North America, we don't sit down and say, how do we work to say that we have a collective position? Because I would equally say to you that the same scenario that one company has, three others have. Exactly. But instead of them three saying, together, let's get everyone together, no. And that's the one there. So, there's strength in numbers. And we sometimes, though, we run into a situation where if I sort it out for me, I ain't going to tell you because I don't want you to benefit from the same thing, and I'm going to help you out on that one. And that's just a lack of maturity from, I'm going to say, the private sector side to say, how do we lobby government?
I mean, again, Rogan has heard me bring up this instance, but just a small thing. So a POA, and this has nothing to do with my self-interest, but, well, it does actually. If it registers in a law office, okay, because a law office is a financial industry registrant, that means that the POA every year has to KYC every member, which is onerous. Okay, so what do? I registered in the President House, because the President House is not a
financial institution.
Now, you would think, right, that this is you talk about protecting your business, that this is because I don't want to do that. No one wants to do that in the house. That this is a source of business for the legal profession, that would be something they would have scoured and say, you know what, we need to make representation to correct that, because that just got caught up in a catch-all.
No, I agree.
Okay.
And we need to move from what I'm going to call sentimental arguments to fact-based arguments, because oftentimes you hear the emotive response, this don't make sense, as opposed to saying the reasons why this is not logical. Let's go into the British now. Is simply saying these are the 5 elements that demonstrate to you why this is not required or necessary.
Do you remember, and I mean, you and I were involved in this, when there was a labor issue most recently, and the immediate response was, this is catastrophic. Okay? This is going to throw you in a tailspin. So, we got very good reception from the then administration, and the simple question put to us was, well, tell us what's going to happen. Okay?
They knew it was catastrophic, but they couldn't detail.
They didn't even know it was catastrophic. That was just, this is... When we did the actual research, it was, it was
limited in the ones
we're going to be, we off there? We finished? Oh, boy. Calvin, boy, you good, buddy?
Yeah.
Well, listen.
Tuna and grits next time.
Tuna
and grits, because
as this debate goes on, what I'd like you to do is if you can come back, because this is stuff. What happens to the points that we were making is people just hear a soundbite.
Yeah.
And there's no breakdown of it. Yeah. There's no analysis of it, and then it becomes unwieldy because it just wastes, as you say, they're just reacting emotionally. Yeah.
So and that's the one that we anytime in that regard, because I think the more we speak to issues, the more we resolve. The more we speak to our emotional response, the more we get the tribalistic responses.
All right. Garin, Bo, thank you very much. Go on about your business. Okay. Rogan, Smith, and Kendrickle. I can't even mispronounce Kendrick's name. Kendrick, thanks a lot. We'll see you on Thursday back here on Ed Feels Live.